Another top story we are watching today is the latest in the sexual harassment accusations against New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. As the New York State Assembly meets today to discuss its impeachment investigation into the embattled governor, a former executive assistant is speaking out, calling for Cuomo to be held accountable for sexually harassing her, as well as 10 other women. Claims which, of course, the governor denies. Brittany Commisso spoke exclusively with CBS This Morning and the Albany Times Union.
These were not hugs that he would give his mother or, his brother. These were hugs with the intention of getting some personal sexual satisfaction out of. Then they started to be hugs with kisses on the cheek. And then there was at one point a hug. And then when he went to go kiss me on the cheek, he quickly turned his head and he kissed me on the lips.
What did you say?
I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything this whole time. People don't understand that this is the governor of the state of New York. There are troopers that are outside of the mansion. They are not there to protect me. They are there to protect him. I felt as though if I did something to insult him, especially insult him in his own home, it wasn't going to be him that was going to get fired or in trouble.
Did you ever have any consensual sexual activity with the governor of New York State?
No.
Is it possible that the governor thought that these interactions that he was having with you was something that was normal, something that he thought was not a big deal?
No. Maybe to him, that he thought this was normal, but to me and the other women that he did this to, it was not normal. It was not welcomed, and it was certainly not consensual.
All right, so Rebecca Roiphe is here to discuss. She is a CBS News legal contributor and former Manhattan prosecutor. Rebecca, it's good to have you here this morning. I don't quite see you yet, but I'm going to assume that you're there. I want to get your reaction. Okay, we can hear you, but the camera's not working. So let's listen to you. I want to get your reaction to hearing Brittany Commisso, what she said happened, how she understood it, and how she believed the Governor Cuomo understood what was going on.
I think it was really credible. A really credible interview. I mean, as a prosecutor, you don't normally want your complaining witness to appear publicly like this before you've completed your investigation, but this is obviously an investigation or an incident that's happening on multiple different levels, and the legal level, the criminal level, is just one of them. So the political importance of her and public importance of her coming forward should not be underestimated. A couple of things that have legal significance in what she said. She did say that he seemed to get sexual gratification out of this incident, and the possible criminal charges, the misdemeanor that he could face for this incident of forcible touching, requires the prosecutors to prove not just that it happened, but also that he did it for the purpose of either abusing her, degrading her, or getting sexual gratification. So that's a significant piece of information that she gave during the course of that interview. I think she also, right there at the end of the clip, was trying to cut off a kind of defense that Cuomo and his lawyers have been putting forward, which is, I'm just a kind of loving Italian guy. I hug everybody. I embrace everybody. I'm so sorry if this was misinterpreted, but, I never sexually assaulted or sexually abused or, inappropriately acted toward anybody. This was just my way of being warm. And I think, her point there at the end is, this is not normal. This is not acceptable. This is not the same as all those pictures of him hugging other politicians or hugging babies. This is different. And so those are two pieces of her interview that I think have legal significance and would be important to the ongoing criminal investigation.
So in terms of the criminal complaint, the criminal investigation, what sort of charges are we talking about here, and how serious would they be?
He would be facing misdemeanor charges here. One of the statutes is forcible touching, which as I said, prevent somebody from forcibly touching a sexual part of another with the purpose of degrading that person or getting sexual satisfaction. And sexual abuse in the third degree is a similar statute. And, those crimes come with up to a year in prison. Usually somebody would not face a year or even any prison time for these crimes. But that, doesn't mean that criminal charges aren't incredibly significant. And you heard Brittany Commisso say, I think this is appropriate. I think this is what should happen. Now, of course, the victim's sense is never what dictates, nor is the public's outcry what dictates what ultimately ends up happening in a prosecutor's office. The prosecutor first has to determine whether or not this criminal conduct occurred, and then has to make another determination about whether it's appropriate to bring charges. So prosecutors don't charge every single time they find criminal conduct. They have to make an additional determination. And one thing that's impermissible for them to consider when deciding whether or not to charge a particular person is political considerations. And so, it's a difficult position that these prosecutors are in right now, because they really have to look at other similar kinds of conduct, whether it would be charged, the deterrent value of charging it, and the cost of bringing this kind of case, because the burden of proof is so high, the evidentiary rules are such that this would take up a lot of resources, and DA's offices are strapped. So that would take away from some other work that the DA's office is doing. And that doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't do it. But, it's a consideration that they have to make. So if no charges come out, people shouldn't then think, oh, that's a statement that Brittany Commisso was not credible, or that she, this is a horrible act. It's just that not all horrible acts are charged as crimes.
Yeah, I did think to myself when you sort of described having to prove the intent behind it, I thought, man, that's a tough sell, unless there's some really clear evidence or the perpetrator says it, that could be kind of challenging. So I could get that. But listen, I want to get into his political fortunes now. The whole country sort of got a lesson in what an impeachment looks like when we're talking about a president over the last few years. But this is a governor. We mentioned that New York State Assembly is meeting today to discuss impeachment proceedings against Cuomo. What will that look like? What's next? It's not exactly the same as when a president is impeached.
It's not exactly the same, but it's not actually all that different. So, the fact that we've been exposed to this twice on the federal level means that we are, I think the public is much more aware of how this works. But yes, article of impeachment would be introduced. There would have to be a vote. Majority would have to vote to impeach. And then in the same way as at the federal level, it would go to the Senate. One of the key differences here is that the jurors would not just consist of the senators. It would be the senators and the 7 judges on the Court of Appeals. So that's different. Another key difference is that Governor Cuomo would step down during the course of this impeachment trial, which, as we know, would not happen at the federal level.
So listen, before we let you go, have to ask you about the latest development, which is Melissa DeRosa resigning. She is the secretary to the governor. That is a very, very powerful position in the state. She's also implicated in the New York Attorney General's report, suggesting that her behavior was retaliatory, that she contributed to a toxic work environment. There are reports that she is terrified upon learning that she was sort of part of this report. What's your take? What sort of legal action could she face?
Right. So, this is important on a number of levels. In a way, it's like, here are all the dominoes falling. This was the person who was most in his inner circle, his most loyal ally, has now jumped ship. And I think that has political significance because there are so few people who are standing by him right now. And I think that, is a key into what's going to happen in the future, that he's been able to withstand a lot of allegations and rumor and facts and, people around him being accused of things. And it doesn't seem like that's happening anymore. So that's one thing that I would take from this incident. In terms of her own involvement, it is true that the report is damning in terms of not, obviously she's not involved in the sexual harassment, but in the effort to retaliate, to cover up, to protect the governor, and And I doubt that she could possibly face some civil charges for that, but some civil complaint about that, but I really don't think so. I think the repercussions are going to be reputational. And, that also is not something that we should minimize too much. I mean, here's somebody who is, she's not an older person. She's not at the point in her career where she was ready to retire. She had a lot of future in front of her, and now this hangs over her forever.
Yeah, great point. Rebecca Roiphe, thank you so much.